Every town has rules. Some are written down, some are spoken quietly, and some are never explained at all. This town has only one rule. Every night, at exactly 9 p.m., every door is locked. Not slammed, not barricaded, just closed, like a shared breath being held. There are no sirens to warn you, no announcements over loudspeakers, no flashing lights telling you to go home. People simply stop what they're doing. Conversations in mid-sentence. Cash registers close without counting the change. Porch lights go dark, one by one, like stars blinking out on purpose. By 9 p.m., the streets are empty. And what's strange isn't how fast it happens. It's how calmly. No panic, no confusion, just obedience. The kind that comes from learning something the hard way. If you asked anyone why the doors lock, they wouldn't answer you directly. They'd smile. They'd change the subject. They'd tell you it's just how things are done here. But here's what they won't say out loud. The rule has nothing to do with crime. Nothing to do with safety, nothing to do with keeping something out, because nothing ever breaks in. What people are afraid of is being seen. At 9 p.m., the town doesn't sleep. It hides. And if you're still outside when that last door clicks shut, if you're standing under a streetlight that suddenly feels too bright, you'll understand the truth very quickly. The rule isn't there to protect you. It's there because whatever comes after 9 p.m. doesn't chase. It doesn't knock. It doesn't force its way in. It only notices what's left behind. And once it notices you, the town will never talk about you again. Not because they forgot, but because remembering you would mean admitting that the rule failed. And in this town, no one survives breaking the rule twice. I arrived in town just before sunset. The sky was still holding on to color, that soft orange glow that makes even forgotten places look welcoming. The road narrowed as I drove in, trees leaning closer together, like they were trying to listen. The town sign was old, paint peeling, letters faded enough to suggest it had been standing there longer than anyone cared to remember. There was no slogan, no population number, just the name. I don't remember what I expected. Maybe something emptier. Something more obviously wrong. Instead, it felt normal, too normal. A few cars parked along the street, a diner with its lights on, someone sweeping their porch like they had all the time in the world. The kind of place you assume nothing bad ever happens, because nothing ever changes. When I stepped inside the diner, the bell above the door rang. Conversations didn't stop, but they softened, like the room had leaned back slightly, giving me space without welcoming me in. The waitress smiled. It was polite. Practiced, the kind of smile that ends before it reaches the eyes. Passing through, she asked. I told her I was. Just for the night. Looking for a place to stay. She nodded, then glanced at the clock behind the counter. It was subtle, quick enough that I almost missed it. Almost. You'll want to settle in before 9, she said. Not should, not need to, want. I laughed, thinking she was joking. Asked if the town rolled up its sidewalks early. No one laughed with me. A man at the counter shifted in his seat. Another folded his newspaper, though he hadn't been reading it. The waitress's smile stayed in place, but something in her jaw tightened. Just don't be out late, she said, sliding me a menu I didn't ask for. I asked why. She didn't answer. Instead, she refilled my water, even though the glass was still full, and walked away. I noticed then how often people checked the time. Not nervously, not in a rush, just habitually, like breathing. Outside, the sun dipped lower. Shadows stretched longer than they should have. The town felt like it was preparing for something, not with fear, but with routine. Like this wasn't the first time. And whatever happened at 9, it happened every night. When I paid and stood to leave, the waitress finally spoke again. If you're staying, she said softly, pick somewhere close. I asked, close to what? She looked at me then, really looked, and for just a moment, her smile disappeared completely. Inside, she said, the town changed as the evening wore on. Not suddenly, not dramatically. It shifted the way a room does when someone says the wrong thing out loud. At first, it was small details. The hardware store closed 20 minutes earlier than the sign claimed. A couple walking their dog turned back halfway down the block, tugging the leash a little too hard. The diner lights dimmed, not off, just softer, like the place was trying to disappear without anyone noticing. No one looked panicked. That was the unsettling part. This wasn't fear reacting to danger. It was fear that had been rehearsed. By 8:30, the town moved with quiet efficiency. Porch chairs were pulled closer to doors. Trash cans were rolled inside garages. Windows were checked, then checked again, not for locks, but for visibility. Curtains mattered more than bolts. I passed a house where a child stood on the porch, staring at the sky like kids do when they're trying to stay awake past bedtime. His mother stepped out behind him, resting her hands on his shoulders. Inside, she said, not angry, not urgent, final. The boy didn't argue. He didn't sigh or roll his eyes. He went willingly, like this was a rule he'd learned before he could read. Further down the street, an elderly man sat on his front steps, watching the road. He nodded at me as I passed. His eyes lingered, then drifted toward the horizon. You should head in, he said. I asked him what happens if I don't. He considered that for a moment, truly considered it, like the answer wasn't simple or safe to phrase. Nothing, he said finally. Then, after a pause long enough to feel intentional, he added, right away. At 8:45, the air felt heavier. Sounds didn't carry as far. My footsteps seemed louder, too sharp against the pavement. Even the wind had gone quiet, as if it was waiting for something to start before it dared move again. I checked my phone. 8:52 p.m. Every clock I passed matched it exactly. No seconds off, no lag, perfect agreement. At 8:58, I stood at the center of town. I watched as the last shop owner turned his sign to closed and stepped inside without looking back. A woman locked her door, rested her forehead against it for a brief moment, and then turned off the light. One by one, the houses sealed themselves. Not like a town under threat, like a town keeping a promise. At 8:59, I was the only one still outside, and when the final minute slipped away, there was no sound, just the soft, unmistakable click of hundreds of locks turning at the same time. The last minute didn't pass normally. It stretched. Each second felt thicker than the one before it, like time itself was resisting what came next. I stood under a streetlight that buzzed softly, the sound suddenly too loud in the quiet. 8:59 p.m. I told myself I still had time. Told myself this was just a strange small-town habit, nothing more. I took a step toward the nearest house. The porch light shut off, not flickered, not failed, turned off. Another step. A door locked somewhere behind me. Then another. The sound carried in a way it shouldn't have, sharp and deliberate, echoing down empty streets. I looked around. Every window was dark now. Not a single glow slipped through a curtain. Even the diner, which had felt warm and alive an hour ago, was a black shape with no reflection in its glass. I checked my phone again. 8:59 p.m. No seconds ticking forward. The street light above me flickered, dimmed, then steadied itself, like it had almost decided to go out, then changed its mind. That's when I realized something. No one was watching anymore. Earlier, I'd felt eyes on me, curious, cautious, measuring. Now there was nothing. The absence of attention was worse. At exactly 9 p.m., it happened, not with a sound, with a sensation. The way the air changes when a storm is about to break, except there were no clouds, no wind, just a pressure, like the town had exhaled and forgotten to breathe back in. Somewhere, a final lock turned, and then the silence settled fully, heavy, complete, unnatural. I called out. My voice sounded wrong, flat, like it didn't belong to me anymore. No echo answered. No movement followed. Just the street, the light, and the sudden, undeniable feeling that I had crossed into something that did not include me. I wasn't late. I was exposed. And whatever the town had been hiding from all day, whatever the rule was meant to avoid, it wasn't waiting for darkness. It was waiting for permission. The street didn't change after 9. That was the first thing I noticed. No fog rolled in. No wind picked up. No shapes stepped out of the dark. Everything looked exactly the same. And yet, I knew, deep in my chest, that something had shifted. The silence wasn't empty. It was attentive. I took a few steps forward. My shoes scraped softly against the pavement, the sound cutting too cleanly through the air. It felt wrong to make noise, like I was interrupting something already in progress. I passed a house where a thin line of light glowed beneath the door. As I approached, it vanished. Not slowly, instantly. A curtain twitched in an upstairs window, just enough to reveal an eye, wide, terrified, locked on me like I was the danger. Then it disappeared. That was when it clicked. They weren't hiding from what was outside. They were hiding from me, or more specifically, from being seen with me. I felt smaller then, not physically, existentially, like the town had drawn a line, and I was standing on the wrong side of it. A sound drifted through the street, soft, irregular, not footsteps, more like something adjusting its weight. I turned, expecting to see a person at the far end of the road. There was nothing there. The streetlight behind me flickered again. I noticed then that my shadow stretched too far, longer than it should have been, bending slightly at the edges like it wasn't sure which direction to go. I moved, and it hesitated before following. My pulse quickened. I told myself shadows do that sometimes. That fear plays tricks on perception. That a quiet town at night can feel hostile if you let your imagination wander. But imagination doesn't make the air feel crowded. Another sound, closer this time. Still no shape, no outline, just a subtle displacement, like the dark itself was learning how to move. I became painfully aware of the streetlight above me, how bright it felt, how exposed. And then I understood the rule. It wasn't about staying inside. It was about not standing where you could be noticed. Because whatever roamed the streets after 9 didn't hunt in the dark. It searched the light. I stepped away from the streetlight. The darkness welcomed me too quickly. It pressed in close, swallowing the edges of my vision, making the world feel narrower than it had any right to be. My heart thudded loud enough that I was sure it would give me away. The sound came again, not behind me, beside me, close enough that I felt it more than I heard it, like a shift in pressure, a subtle rearranging of space. The air there felt thicker, as if something had leaned into it. I froze. Whatever it was didn't move. We stayed like that for several seconds. Me, holding my breath. It, waiting. Waiting for what? I didn't know. I took another step. The sound followed, delayed by just a fraction of a second. A test. I swallowed and forced myself to walk, slow and steady. Every movement I made felt observed, studied, not with malice, with interest. That scared me more than aggression ever could. I passed a storefront window and caught my reflection in the glass. Or almost did. The reflection lagged, just enough to notice. When I stopped, it kept moving for half a second longer, then corrected itself. My stomach dropped. I pressed my palm against the glass. The reflection did the same, but the timing was off again. Like it was guessing. Like it was learning how I worked. I pulled my hand back quickly. The presence shifted in response. Closer now, still unseen. I realized then that it wasn't circling me. It was mirroring me. Not perfectly. Not yet. This thing wasn't trying to scare me. It was trying to understand me. A faint sound drifted through the night, barely more than a whisper of movement. I followed it without meaning to, drawn by a pull I couldn't explain. That's when I noticed the houses. Every one of them was dark, except one. A single window, faintly lit at the far end of the street. And behind that glass, something moved. Not hurried, not afraid, watching. I didn't know the town yet, but it was already speaking to me. Not with voices, not with signs, with fragments, clues left in passing. In the way the streets curved unnaturally, in the way a newspaper sat folded on a porch, headlines facing the wall, like someone wanted to hide the words without destroying them. I caught phrases as I passed, bits of conversation carried on the wind, or maybe echoes of them from the past. Disappeared, no evidence. Voluntary. They say it's safer that way. Don't look, never look. I wanted to chase them, ask questions, but no one was there to answer. Only silence pressed against me, thick as wet cloth. The diner, empty now, held a scent that lingered in the doorway. Coffee, yes, but something else, faint and metallic, like iron and old paper. It tugged at a memory I didn't have, or maybe didn't want to remember. A rusted sign leaned against a post, half buried in shadow. Welcome. The letters seemed to twist in the dark, as though the town itself wanted me to read and not read at the same time. I remembered something the elderly man had said earlier. Nothing. Right away. What did he mean? What was nothing? I walked past the houses. Windows covered with thick curtains, mirrors turned to face walls, doors bolted inside, not out. A strange, ritualistic care taken, but for what? I realized then. The town had rules beyond 9 p.m. Rules older than anyone alive. Rules that govern not safety, but existence itself. I imagined someone here, a long time ago, breaking them, or ignoring them. Whatever they saw, whatever had noticed them, had taught the town the consequences. People weren't afraid of the dark. They were afraid of being seen in the wrong way. And memory, I realized with a cold twist in my stomach, was fragile here. The town remembered you only if you obeyed. If you didn't, it forgot you. Not fully, but enough. I paused in the middle of the street. The wind whispered, almost intelligible. A shadow shifted behind a curtain. A door clicked. No one spoke. No one moved. And for a moment, I understood. The rule was not about locking doors. It was about controlling what is noticed. And I had noticed too much. The doors weren't locked to keep anyone out. Not really. I watched, half hidden in the shadow of a street lamp, as the locks clicked one by one across the street. The sound was soft, precise, deliberate. It wasn't protection. It was containment. Windows didn't just close. Curtains were drawn so tightly that even a sliver of light couldn't escape. Mirrors were turned, reflecting nothing but walls and ceilings. Lights weren't simply extinguished. They were dimmed carefully, as if too much brightness could call attention where attention was forbidden. I remembered the reflection in the storefront window, the one that lagged behind my movements. It wasn't just a trick of the light. It was the rule in motion. To be noticed at the wrong time was to exist where you shouldn't. The town itself had learned this over decades, maybe centuries. Every small detail, the silent closing of doors, the early retreat of children, the quiet lowering of lights, was a rehearsal, a ritual, a warning encoded into the streets, the houses, the very air. I took a step toward the nearest porch. My shadow stretched unnaturally long, bending around corners, defying geometry. I froze. It reacted, not violently, not maliciously, but it reacted. It noticed. The pressure in the air thickened, tangible and deliberate. Every breath I drew felt heavier. Every heartbeat echoed in a way that seemed to bounce off invisible walls. And then I understood. Visibility was permission, not to live, not to leave, but to be remembered. If the town didn't see you, or worse, if something else did, you might continue breathing, continue walking, continue pretending to exist, but you would no longer matter. The thought sent a chill crawling up my spine. I stepped back. The door I had approached remained closed, but it felt alive, watching, waiting, judging. The rule wasn't a rule at all. It was a sentence. And the town? The town was both jailer and jury. I glanced down the street. One house, the farthest from me, had a single light glowing weakly through the curtains. It flickered, almost like it was breathing, and I realized the light wasn't for them. It was for it. Whatever prowled outside the rules of the town, it didn't want noise. It didn't want chaos. It wanted attention, and once it got that attention, there was no undoing it. I didn't see it at first, not clearly, but I felt it, a weight in the air, a movement in the edges of my vision that didn't belong to shadows or wind. The street was empty. The town had vanished inside its houses. Yet something walked. It didn't make footsteps, exactly. The asphalt didn't creak beneath it. The air itself seemed to fold around its passage. I turned slowly. Nothing. I looked again. A subtle distortion in the darkness, like the space itself had decided to move. It paused when I paused, swayed when I swayed, never rushing, never threatening, only noticing. I swallowed, the sound harsh in my own ears. This was no predator, no animal, no human. It was something else, something patient. I tried to imagine its shape. Could it be tall? Could it be thin? Could it be many things at once? Every attempt failed. Every shape I assigned it dissolved into wrongness, like a photograph that refuses to develop. The more I tried to define it, the more it learned. I realized then that it didn't care if I ran. It didn't chase. It didn't knock. It only reacted to observation. I stepped into the faint light of a single street lamp. My shadow stretched, elongated, trembling. The darkness beside me seemed to bend toward the light, not aggressively, but curiously. Then I made the mistake. I glanced too long into the shadow. It froze. I froze. Something shifted in the space beside me. Not a step, not a sound, not a shape, only an unmistakable awareness. A weight pressed against the air, testing me, studying me, learning me. I realized then what the town had never said. The reason for the locked doors, the drawn curtains, the dimmed lights, was not to hide from the dark. It was to hide from it, from that thing. The thought should have been comforting if I had understood it sooner. Stay inside, stay unseen. But now, standing out here, I understood the other truth. If it notices you, it doesn't have to move to take you. All it needs is for you to exist in the wrong way. And then, slowly, inevitably, it begins to claim you. I understood the first rule. Stay inside. Be unseen. Don't draw attention. But there was another. A rule no one spoke aloud. One that weighed heavier than the locks, the curtains, the dimmed lights. One that governed more than movement or position. Do not look. Not at the shadow. Not at the windows. Not at what moves in the darkness. Because if you acknowledge it, even accidentally, you give it permission. I felt it then, in a shiver that traveled from my spine to my fingers. Something out there was learning how I moved, how I breathed, how I reacted, and it wasn't done. I tried to move carefully, but every step felt loud, deliberate, too human. Every sound I made seemed to echo, not in the air, but in the attention of whatever was out there. I remembered the fragments of conversation I'd overheard earlier. Voluntary disappearance. Don't look. The people of the town had survived because they obeyed both rules. Not just the visible one, the one you could see, the doors, the curtains, the retreat indoors, but also the invisible one, what you refused to see, what you refused to acknowledge. They had learned the hard way that recognition could be fatal. I realized then that I had broken the first rule. I had walked outside at 9, and I had broken the second as well. I had looked, I had noticed. The presence shifted closer. I felt the air thicken around me, as if space itself had weight. A shadow aligned strangely with mine, but it didn't move quite like me. It mimicked, yes, but with delays and hesitation, learning how I existed. I tried to remind myself that it didn't chase, that it didn't harm, that maybe, just maybe, I could still survive if I didn't panic. But the thought of being noticed was worse than fear. It wasn't my life at stake. It was my existence. Because here, in this town, existence wasn't measured by breath or heartbeat. It was measured by whether anyone, or anything, saw you. And right now, I was being studied, dissected, remembered, for a purpose I couldn't yet name. Time stopped making sense. Minutes stretched, folded, and then collapsed into each other. My watch had stopped at 9:03, but the streetlights flickered as if they were still tracking the seconds. My footsteps echoed, though nothing else made a sound. I began to doubt my own senses. Was the street bending? Were the houses shifting? No, but they seemed unfamiliar, as though memory itself had betrayed me. The same building I passed twice appeared subtly different, the trim slightly altered, the paint darker. I was not imagining it, but what I was seeing didn't make sense. The shadow that had been following me, or mirroring me, was learning faster now. When I stopped, it hesitated for just a fraction of a second before freezing exactly as I froze. When I moved, it lagged, just barely, then corrected itself, mimicking me with an eerie patience. I realized it wasn't interested in me yet. Not fully. It was testing me, and I could feel my own thoughts reflected back at me. Hesitation, fear, the tiniest slip in concentration, all of it mirrored in a presence that had no form, no face, but a terrifying intelligence. I walked slowly, trying not to give it anything, trying to remain unnoticed. But every instinct, every heartbeat, betrayed me. Then came the first sound I couldn't explain. A soft footstep, irregular, distant, yet impossibly close. It didn't belong to me. Not exactly. And it wasn't a human rhythm. It paused when I paused. It accelerated when I accelerated. A perverse dance, perfectly attuned to my every motion. I turned quickly. Nothing. And yet, the presence had changed. The air felt heavier around me. Pressure pressed against my chest. I could almost hear it breathing. Not a human breath, not a wind, but an exhalation of attention. I was not alone. And worse, I had already been seen. My mind began to spin. Had I always been watched? Was the town itself alive, feeding this presence, teaching it, grooming it? Had the people behind those darkened windows been participating all along, silently rehearsing the rules I was now breaking? I realized, with a cold twist in my gut, that I wasn't navigating a town. I was navigating a memory, a lesson, an entity that only existed because it had observers. And now, I had become one of them. The streetlights flickered again. Shadows danced where none should have been. The reflection in the darkened storefronts no longer matched my movements perfectly. It had learned something about me, and I had learned something about the town. It was patient, it was intelligent, and it was waiting for the moment I let my attention slip. Because in this place, your mind is the door, and once it opens, you may never close it again. I used to think the worst thing that could happen was dying out here. I was wrong. Death would have been simple, clean, final. What the town feared was continuation. I noticed it in the houses first. Not the dark ones, but the ones that felt occupied. Some windows held shapes that never moved. Not silhouettes. Not people watching. Presences. They stood too still, too centered, as if they were waiting for instructions they had already forgotten how to follow. I remembered the way the waitress's smile never reached her eyes. The way the old man had paused before answering my question. The way no one ever said the word missing out loud. They hadn't lost people. They had kept them. I understood then what happened when the rule was broken. You weren't taken away. You were reassigned. Seen too clearly. Remembered by the wrong thing. Folded into the town like an afterthought that refuses to fade. You kept breathing. You kept walking. You even kept your name, technically. But something vital was removed. Choice. Urgency. Presence. You became compliant. A resident who never stayed outside too long. A figure who dimmed their lights just right. A person who warned newcomers gently, but never explained why. I passed a house where someone stood behind the door. I could feel them there. Not afraid, resigned. Their existence felt thin, like paper held up to a light. They were alive in the way a memory is alive, only as long as someone keeps it intact. The thing in the street shifted. Closer now, not to threaten me, to finalize me. This was the cost of being seen. Not pain, not terror, replacement. The town didn't sacrifice people to survive. It converted them. And suddenly the rule made perfect sense. Why it had to be exact. Why no exceptions were allowed. Why no one ever left. Because once you were seen by it, the town needed you to stay. I stopped walking. The street felt longer than it had when I arrived. Houses seemed unfamiliar, though I had passed them before. The town itself had shifted, or maybe I had shifted. Either way, nothing felt stable anymore. Then it hit me. The town was not just following rules. The town was alive. Not in the way a town can feel lived in or familiar. Not like a building holding memory. It responded. It learned. It adapted. Every door I passed, every curtain I saw drawn, every shadow that moved when it shouldn't, none of it was random. It had been training me, testing me, watching what I noticed, watching how I reacted, and whatever waited outside the doors, it wasn't an intruder. It was the town's mirror, its tool, its predator, its keeper, and the chilling part, the part that made my blood run ice cold. I realized that I wasn't an outsider here anymore. I was part of the lesson. The town had always needed someone like me, someone curious, someone careless enough to notice, someone who would see too much, stand outside too long, and give the thing its opportunity. And suddenly, everything I had seen, the mirrors turned away, the curtains, the exact timing of 9 p.m., made sense. The town existed because the rule worked, because those who failed became part of the system. And as I looked down the street, I noticed that subtle changes in the buildings, the spacing, the angles of shadows, they weren't errors. They were memories. Not mine, not anyone's alive. Memories of those who had stood where I stood and survived only by becoming invisible, by joining the pattern, by surrendering their presence. The realization crushed me. I wasn't just being tested. I was being prepared for a purpose I didn't yet understand. And the thing walking in the street, patient, intelligent, unmoving, was waiting for the moment I fully comprehended it. The sun had long disappeared, leaving the town suspended in a darkness that felt too thick to be natural. I knew the rules now. I understood the cost of being seen. I understood the reason for the locks, the curtains, the dimmed lights. And I understood that the presence outside wasn't hunting me. It was waiting for me to choose. Stay outside, step into the light, let it notice you, or retreat, obey the ritual, enter a house, close the door, dim the light, and become part of the town's memory, compliant, observed, but no longer free. I walked slowly down the main street, eyes darting to every darkened window, every still figure behind a curtain. The street lights buzzed above me, unnervingly bright against the shadows. One house at the end of the street had a door slightly ajar. A single warm light spilled into the street. It wasn't a welcome. It was a test. Every instinct screamed at me to step back, to run, to hide, but something drew me closer. I felt the weight of the town pressing down from every direction. The silence was no longer empty. It was alive, watching, judging, waiting. The presence outside moved again. Not quickly, not with menace, but it adjusted, leaned, mirrored. Its attention was precise, deliberate. I realized then that this night, the final night of my freedom, was not about survival. It was about compliance, about acknowledging the rules I had ignored, about accepting that curiosity had a price. I stopped in front of the open door. My reflection in the glass flickered, lagged, then corrected itself. And I understood there was no undoing it. I could stay outside and risk being claimed by the thing in the shadows, or step inside and risk being erased, slowly, painfully, by the town itself. Every second stretched into eternity. My heartbeat echoed through the street. The distant flicker of windows, the slight hum of a locked door somewhere behind me, all waiting. Then I made my choice. The door creaked as I pushed it open. A cold silence greeted me. The streetlight above me dimmed, and I realized, too late, that I had been noticed again, by everyone, and by nothing, all at once. Because in this town, leaving the rule behind was never an option. The door shut behind me. I expected safety. I expected warmth. A room, a bed, human voices. but the air was empty. Still, wrong. I turned, heart pounding, and realized the room wasn't mine. It didn't belong to anyone. The furniture was familiar, and yet subtly distorted. A chair too tall, a picture frame tilted at the wrong angle, shadows that didn't align with the light. Then I saw them. Not the people of the town, not their shapes behind windows. My own reflection. In the glass of a mirror turned carefully toward the wall, a figure moved like me, but slightly off. Hesitated where I didn't. Tilted its head when I held mine straight. Waited when I wanted to act. And I understood in a sudden, gut-deep horror. The rule had never been about safety. It had been about containment. The thing that walked outside, the thing that mirrored me. It had been waiting for someone careless enough to notice. Someone who would step into the light. And now it had a body. Mine. Not fully, not yet, but enough to replace what it wanted. The town outside. The obedient houses. The locked doors. The dimmed lights. They were not protecting themselves. They were protecting it. I realized the terrible truth. By stepping inside, by obeying the final door, I had given the presence a place in the world, and I was already becoming part of the pattern. I was alive, yes, breathing, moving, but not me. The reflection smiled, not my smile. Something colder, precise, patient. And then, slowly, it stepped forward. The lights flickered once, then went out. Outside, the town fell silent. And in that silence, I heard it whisper, perfectly clear, even though no mouth moved. Now you understand. And I did. Somewhere, far away, the clocks ticked toward 9 p.m. And the town waited, as it always had, for the next mistake.